5:30. I will call the meeting to order. First, I will read the recognition. We would like to begin by acknowledging the treaty territory of the Anishinaabe, which is defined within the pre-Confederation treaty known as the London Township Treaty of 1796. Throughout time, this region has also become the current home to the Haudenosaunee and Lenni Lenape nations. That'll be the last time I think we do that particular version of the land acknowledgement, in case anybody's going to ask me that, why we didn't do the new one. We haven't approved it yet, so it'll be coming soon. Next, I need completion and acceptance of the agenda. I'm assuming everyone has had a chance to review the agenda. Other than a couple of items that we're going to cover under new business, I don't have anything that I'm aware of that anyone wants to add. So can I get a motion to accept the agenda as is? Moved by Gary, thank you. Seconded by Hadley. All those in favor? That matter is passed. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest that we need to know about? There being none. Again, the previous minutes have been circulated. So I will just ask if someone is prepared to move and second those, or moved by Gary, seconded by Mayor Grantham. All those in favor? That is also approved. No communications, no delegations, and no presentations. So we're going to go to the consent agenda items. The first report is staff report 2023-63, which is the CEO report. So maybe I will get you to highlight anything that is in there. CEO, and then we'll move it seconded and ask for any questions. So I'll turn things over to you, Paul.
Thank you. And through the chair, just 4 items highlighted in this CEO update. Firstly, we've been having conversations about insurance renewal here at the board and noting increasing risk and increasing costs of fires and other claims. Just flagging that we had another information session with our insurance provider, and we'll be coming back to the board with some recommendations and discussion items about transitioning to a non-smoking housing provider to see if that's something we should be doing and when, developing policies requiring mandatory tenant insurance, and just outlining our strategies to better engage with tenants on fire safety. So those are the things recommended to help manage our risks. So we'll come back to the board with that in the new year. We did meet for the local housing corporations in Ontario. We met with the Assistant Deputy Minister of Community Services and Housing, Angela Cook. It's an ongoing conversation to try to sort of address some of the provincial level programs and regulations that impact us as a provider. So we spoke about simplification of RGI, just better understanding the housing needs in Ontario, addressing the capital repair backlog, and some other matters that, may improve some funding for the provincial level or address some pain points for us as an organization and other providers. So we will be having further conversations in 2024 on that in Q1. So we're hoping that we'll make some progress on that. The other 2 items, community safety, is something we traditionally speak to the board about as winter sets in. Just talking generally, we see an increase of unhoused individuals and increased guest activity at our sites as people look to shelter from the winter and the weather, and that causes issues and detracts from the peaceful enjoyment of our current tenants. So we do have an overnight, or I guess to remind the board, we do have overnight security services at 3 sites traditionally: 580 Dundas, 241 Simcoe, and our properties at 349 and 345 Warncliffe Drive. In addition to these locations, this year we've added security guard services doing patrols at our Kent and Albert Street locations. So just working between those 2 sites as they're adjacent to each other. So we have reviewed what November looked like in terms of security incident reports by our security provider, and we're looking to what other steps we should be taking to respond to this dynamic change in sort of needs in our community. Every year it impacts different buildings differently. So we're just trying to look at that data to determine what our next steps are. So we'll be sort of adjusting our service model based on what that data tells us in the coming weeks. And then I think finally, just, the City of London is rolling out a green bid program for residential homes. They are also rolling that out to townhouse communities, including community housing providers like ourselves. So we have, I think, 7 townhouse communities that will be impacted. So we're going to work with the city over the next few months to develop an implementation plan and sort of figure out how we do that. It will be we're going to need to invest a little bit in infrastructure to make this happen, because there'll probably be communal green bins in a few locations. But we already had investment in garbage infrastructure on our capital program, and sort of something that we're planning to do anyway. So we're going to try to get that information as soon as we can so we can make those changes. But so we'll provide an update once we get the program guidelines, but it's an ongoing conversation, and it's sort of part of, the program of the City of London to green the communities and sort of better manage our waste. So we're fully supportive of that. With that, I'm
Can
happy
you
to answer
just,
questions.
maybe for the benefit, there's 2 people here that I have never seen before. Maybe one was, or both were at the last meeting, but should we introduce them, or should you
So I
introduce
can
them?
do some introductions.
Could you do that right
So,
now?
and we did that, yes.
Throw them out of just throw them out. I don't.
They're not allowed in. So 2 introductions, and Anam Omar is our Director of Finance and Corporate Services. She joined us in the last 3 weeks, so she made her first appearance at the last Finance Committee meeting, where we did do an introduction, and apologies, it slipped my mind. So she joins us after a number of years in finance and business analytics in the private sector, most recently with Pitney Bowes. So she is in the role of, as I said, Director of Finance and Corporate Services. So we're looking forward to sort of her support in sort of building on the good foundation we have for our financial practices and supporting risk management, business analytics, IT, as well as finance.
Great.
Excellent. And then if you have any questions, or if Anam wants
No,
to say a word.
I would just say welcome. We're happy to have you here. Nice to meet you. And is there anything you want to let us know about yourself? We'll write it all down if you do.
The only thing that I would say is that I'm happy to be here. It's not often that I get a chance to do meaningful work. I come from the private sector to the public world. So that's what I'm definitely looking forward to. It's not, from my perspective, numbers are on a spreadsheet. So this is the first opportunity I've had to do meaningful work that really impacts society. So I'm here, and I hope I can do that.
Thank you very much. And again, welcome.
And then I think the other person at the table that you may not be as familiar with is Matt Senechel, yes, I forgot a vowel. Sorry about that. He is our communications manager. So he joined us in late October or early November.
No.
October 30th, right?
30th, right?
He came at Halloween. So yes, he's going to help us with our strategic initiatives related to improving our communication with tenants, and sort of it's an investment in making sure that we're doing that work meaningfully over the next year and beyond. So Matt is our communications manager.
Right. So although you've been here a while, I have not seen you before. So again, welcome. Nice to have you here. Come again whenever you feel like it. There's nothing but excitement at the board table. You'll find that out. So thank you for being here. Thanks for your work. So if I could get a mover and seconder to receive Paul's report, and then we can go to any questions that we might have. Moved by Councillor Hadley and the mayor of Strathroy-Caradoc. Is it Strathroy-Caradoc?
It is.
Perfect, I got that right. So before we vote, any questions that anyone might have in relation to Paul's report? Yes, John Corboy.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the report, Paul, and welcome, Nav and Matt. It's great to have you here. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying what you're doing and you're with us. I did have new business, like something I wanted to talk about later, but can we just, it should be very brief, so I just wanted to mention that now.
You just want to have it added?
Yep.
Okay, I'll just call on you then. When new business comes up, we'll make sure you have a chance to say that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else on the CEO report? No, then we'll vote to receive this report. All in favor? And that is passed. So next is the vacancy management update, and I don't know whether Christine is going to speak to that. All right. So we have the report. Before we move in second, you can add anything that you might wish to that report.
Sure, and thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that the total units in active restoration as of December 2022 was at 126. And for November of 2023, we are now at 66, which brings us to 2.7%, which is just under the 3% goal.
That won't appear on the record, but I think I get the gist. I think we get the gist that the reaction of the board to that was happiness and congratulations on that and thank you. So with that being said, we'll look for someone to move and second that report. Moved by the deputy mayor, second by John Corboy. Any questions in addition to what we have heard? Questions, comments? I guess it sort of speaks for itself. So we'll just vote on that. All those in favor? And thank you for that report and congratulations again on hitting that benchmark. That's so important. So we'll now move on to reports and business. The first is staff report 2023-65, which is the KMPG auditor's presentation 2023 audit plan. So our new financial person
Okay.
will present, I assume, because we hear enough from Paul and we don't want to hear about everything.
Would you like me to take you through the report? Or
I
just
think the
give you an
highlights, yeah,
overview?
we're expected
So-
and we do review the report, so an
Okay.
overview and then questions will cover
Okay.
things that the board are interested in.
Right, so the audit plan will be similar to previous year's audit plans. However, the highlights for this year is the asset retirement obligation. That is a risk that will be part of the audit plan. We obviously have to complete the calculations. Then we will have to report a liability. That requirement came on board last year. So it is definitely effective. We've engaged the vendor, so we're doing what the asset retirement obligation is supposed to do from a calculation perspective is to look at things like asbestos and the cost of decommissioning it or removing the asbestos in the future. So there's definitely an estimate required. And what KPMG would be looking at is our calculation reliable? Can we trust it? Did we approach it the way that we should have, so on and so forth? So that work is being done now and that it will be part of the audit plan for this year, which has not happened in the past. So that's definitely new. In terms of what is consistent year over year, it's the same range of materiality, somewhere between 785 and 800,000. That's from an absolute dollar perspective. However, because the cost is going up year over year, the materiality threshold is actually becoming more sensitive because it's this year 2.6% versus last year's 2.8. So that's a notable change. What else? In terms of what the audit plan looks at and the major areas, it really focuses on two pillars. One is the risk of the material risk of fraud or misstatement. The other way you can get misstatements through fraud and through error. So the fraud portion is the controls, ensuring that we have the right controls in place from a management perspective. The other piece is the risk of error. So are there errors in the way we record expenses, cash, so on and so forth, our financial statements? So the procedures are going to be the same year over year. And I don't want to lose anybody. I know it's cut and dry. But that's the gist of it. I can definitely go into more detail if you'd like me to.
No, that's great. You had the most exciting topic of the meeting, so we were thrilled to hear from you. So maybe we'll look for a mover and second. Is that to receive or is it for approval of the audit plan? Must be
Receive.
approval.
Receive.
So I need a mover and seconder to receive that the audit plan. Moved by the deputy mayor, second again by John Corboy. Any questions or comments on the audit plan? No, so we'll vote on that. All in favor? And that matter is also passed. The next report is staff report 2023-66, which is the CMCH kitchen retrofits at senior sites. Trevor is not here. Is somebody going to, so we'll go back to Paul on that one. Maybe you can just give us sort of a short summary on that one.
And thank you. And through the chair, as part of the repair and renew program with Canada Mortgage and Housing, we are looking to improve the accessibility of common areas within the designated buildings. So we have 4 seniors buildings that are part of this program, and we have identified the need to update the kitchens and improve their accessibility. So what you have before you is a report recommending that we award the contract to Grand River Module Limited for a value of $108,000 for the design and build of these new accessible kitchens. So it's around 25,000, just over 25,000 per kitchen, and is within the budget estimates that we had for this program. So we're recommending moving forward with this project.
All right. So can I get a mover and seconder for that before we have any questions? I'll turn down here. Councillor McAllister and Mayor Grantham was just a yes, he's going to second it. Questions on that report? I just have one question. At some point since I've been here, people have pointed out to me that we don't have any seniors buildings, and maybe I'm wrong, seniors buildings per se. Because I know in the past, people had called me and said, I'm in a seniors building and it's too noisy for a seniors building or something like that. So am I wrong about that we have buildings that are designated just for seniors?
Yeah. Yes,
Oh.
and if I could, through the chair, just ask
Yeah.
Andrea to sort of just clarify the.
Sure.
Through the chair, thank you. We do have a number of buildings here in London that are classified as seniors. Some of them are 55 plus, and then some of them are the traditional 65 plus, and then out in the county as well, we have some seniors properties. There are, I think it's 6 large size buildings here in London that are senior.
Oh, that's my misunderstanding
Yeah.
again.
So I think what you may hear is what people consider a senior and a 55 plus.
Mm.
The
Be
behavior,
careful, be very careful now.
the seniors are more active at 55 plus than they are at 65 plus. So some of those behaviors are troubling to some of the older seniors, none of which are at the table. So
You're
that,
jumping right into it, and you're insulting me in every way possible here, but go ahead.
but so we're putting younger seniors in at 55 plus, that the behaviors are sort of inconsistent with what the longer term tenants would consider senior behavior. So there's some of the conflict there. And sometimes there are folks that, like persons with disabilities or otherwise, that sort of are also allowed in under the mandate that may cause challenges in sort of what the expected behavior is in a senior building. So it's not unusual, and that's been something that's been going on since the age shift from 65 below 65.
Fair enough. I just want to go on the record saying that my behavior at 65 is often challenging for every age group. So I just to be really clear on that. Thank you very much. That I was under the impression that we no longer have per se seniors building, so that must be my misconception.
As Ms. McKenzie said, there's there's 6 buildings and main buildings, and then there's one in Strathroy that's smaller. There's almost 1,200 units, if my memory serves me correct, or it's 1,100 or 1,200.
Good to
So
know.
it's quite a significant portion.
Chair, there's a lovely unit in Strathroy awaiting you. We would welcome you, and your presence on town council would be amazing.
Oh, I'll head out there and run, yeah. Thank you very much for that explanation. I appreciate that. Any other questions? No? All those in favor? Thank you very much. So
I will
we'll-
happily validate, by the way, Chair, that your behavior has been challenging regardless of your age.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that backup. Next is reports for information. The first is the Human Resources Manager update, and I'll turn it over to you, Terry.
The report was discussed at the Human Resources Governance Committee, and I think we went through the numbers and just the trends. Positive trends to highlight is that we've sort of at the end of Q3, we've hit full complement and maintained it for about 2 months, which is positive. But I think for us as an organization who's been working hard towards attracting and retaining talent, it was good to have that, full complement, even if it was for a short period of time. Our recruitment's also a little bit lower, which is good just to free us up for other work. I think the big initiatives to just highlight is just what's happening in occupational health and safety as part of our strategic plan in terms of having a healthy organization. We see having safe work environments, both psychologically and physically for staff, as being key. So, we've launched some initiatives over the last 2 quarters to try and align ourselves with both the WSIB's Health and Safety Excellence Program, as well as engaging some specialists in terms to support us in terms of doing workplace violence risk assessments at our most high acuity buildings. The intention of driving and using that information in order to ensure that we have a good safety plan in place for our organizations. Other than that, there is a couple of legislative updates which have come and passed and been implemented. But I think I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Thank you very much. Somebody prepared to move and move and second, receiving that for information purposes. Moved by Gary, seconded by Councilor McAllister. Questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. Just out of curiosity, what is our full comp?
92 FTEs, and then we have our resident contacts, which are casual. And then it might bubble up and down depending on whether or not we have co-op or substitute replacements or occasional temporary staff depending on categories.
And do we have any critical positions that are still pending in terms of being open?
No, fortunately not. I mean, our big challenge, a critical position in the sense that it's one of our most important positions, is struggling to fill is maintenance repair, but we've actually achieved full complement, although the individual will only be joining us in January, just time period of that. But no, and we're actually our recruitment right now is more sort of increasing complement in strategic places. So it's not so much filling positions, but looking at our complement and filling them up with where we feel the need. So we currently have 2 vacancies as a result of resignations, just due to career opportunities, which I think we'll continue seeing in the future, but nothing critical right now that's vacant.
Any other questions? There being none, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor to receive it? Thank you very much. Next is annual pay adjustments, and Kurt, you're up
Thank
again.
you. Through the chair, very briefly, this is, I think, just for information for the board in terms of compensation for management and non-union group. I think this is just confirmation of established practice. We're currently engaged in collective bargaining with the union, with the unionized staff, which will not conclude before the conclusion of the current collective agreement, which is December 31st. As a result, financial increases for that group will not be finalized until the new year. And because we see our salary packet as one envelope, no traditional inflation-based adjustments will be provided to the non-union management group effective January 1st. But once we have finalization on the numbers, the intention is to then apply that retroactively, as we would with our unionized staff as well, back to January.
All right. So that short report, mover and seconder for that, please. Counselor, thank you again, and Mayor Grantham moved it and seconded it. Any questions? I guess my only question, is there financial adjustments that have to be made on our sort of year-end statements or something to account for that retroactivity?
So that will only be in the new year. So traditionally, the inflationary adjustments occur in January 1 of the new year.
Oh, okay.
So this is not anything that will be backdated to the 2023 year. It's just something that when we finalize will be backdated to January 1st of next year.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? All right, all those in favor? Thank you, that matter's passed. And last under the reports for information is the HRG committee work plan. Paul?
Thank you. And through the chair, just we've attached a tentative committee meeting schedule for 2024. It is dependent on approval of the board meeting schedule. So these dates may be changing to reflect what board meetings they feed into, as well as the committee memberships. So we're just providing this for information, just indicating their plan is to have 4 meetings of the Human Resources and Governance Committee based on the current work plan to feed into the appropriate board meetings. And we've identified just some of those standard items that go to the work plan. And I think just pointing out that the expectation is the work plan itself, the items that go, agenda items, will be driven by requests from the committee itself, as well as the work we do on the strategic plan, which will bring some of the healthy organization, healthy workplace items. You know, those work plans will be coming through the HRGC committee at the current state.
Thank you very much. Somebody prepared to move and second that? Gary is moving and John is going to second it. I knew if I looked long enough, I get a mover and seconder, so thank you very much. Any questions? I guess my only question is, I understand the last meeting, there was a proposal to look at the committees. Is this sort of subject to that also? If the board was perchance to make some changes to committees, I take it that would impact us?
Yeah, so if you know, the plan is to bring back a workshop item to the board on the committee mandate, and sort of if the mandates of the committee changes, so will the work plan. And we'll make those adjustments once we receive that direction from the board, and that plan is to have that conversation in January.
Okay.
So there will be some items that may flow through into the February board meeting that flow through this work plan, but we may make changes after that.
Thank you. All right, any other questions, comments? There being none, all those in favor? Thank you. So the next set of reports are the HRGC reports for approval. So what I'm gonna do is we'll just have presentation, I will ask if there's any additional information that anyone wishes to provide, being Paul or Dirk, and I'll let them do that first, then we'll move them as a package. So Paul, maybe we can start. Do you have any comments or things you'd like to bring to our attention on all of the reports except for H? And I'll ask Dirk about H.
Yeah, so just making sure I'm just
Yep,
looking to the
go
right
ahead, take a
reports on
second.
my agenda. I think just overall, just speak to could comment on the staff expense policy, item E. It is just really being updated to reflect the current practice of the City of London and make sure that we sort of have a strong framework for covering expenses. The board will recall we updated the board expense policy earlier this year as part of just a policy renewal piece we're going to. So there's no, you know, everything there is consistent with a past practice and or what that City of London is doing today. We do have a set of policies that we're due for renew. So we try to do a policy renewal cycle every 2 years. So we have a set of policies on the code of conduct and the conflict of interest policy that needed to be refreshed. There is no fundamental changes to those, just some formatting, etc. So that's just part of a policy renew and refresh. And the policy under G, the board evaluation policy, is just putting the board evaluation back on the forefront for the board. We're supposed to conduct that annually, and we've realigned the timing of that to better align with the selection of board members and the annual general meeting, so that we do this review in the winter of every year, starting in January, so we have information to feed back if we want to recruit different memberships or address issues identified through the board evaluation process.
Thank you. Dirk, do you have anything to add on your report?
No, just as I mentioned at the top, we have enrolled in the WSIB Health and Safety Access Program. And as part of that, we review of our existing health and safety policy as part of the accountability topics that we've chosen. Very small administrative changes have been brought on in consultation and with support of our Joint Health and Safety Committee. None of it is of substance. It's just small adjustments just to ensure that we align completely with the requirements of the WSIB for that. So it's good confirmation that we're on the right track with the content of our policies, and these small changes hopefully will allow us to submit successfully to the WSIB. And we're just asking the board supports us to implement that.
Thank you very much. So all of those reports, which are E through I, we'll look for a mover and seconder of those, and Gary's gonna move it, and Kathleen, I think, is about ready to second something. So she's seconding that. Any questions or comments?
Comment.
Go ahead, Mayor Grantham.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Comment on this, but I've been on the receiving end of this in a previous life, and the business meals expense as a former salesperson that did a lot of traveling. My question is this, are we bound by the London Council rules? And when was the last time that the London Council rules were appended? Because, and there is some seriousness in it. It's about how we treat our employees. I'm not sure how much travel they do, but you know, I look at the HR retention, and I know one thing that makes people happy when they travel is not being able to be enforced to go to McDonald's or somewhere to eat. It may seem like a little thing, but being somebody who's done a lot of traveling in my life, get stuck by that expense limit. So I would just ask, what is the opportunity, especially given the price of everything today, to move it upward?
You want to comment on that? I don't.
Yeah, I will just, my comment will be, we have just moved them upwards. So this is an increase of probably between 20 to 30%
Okay.
over the previous policy. And I think as we are a related entity to the City of London, we need to take our lead on respect for taxpayers' dollars and try to balance those things out with our shareholder. So I think, you know, if there is a compelling reason to have additional increases, and sometimes that happens with international travel, but as an organization, we don't do a lot of that. So I think we're comfortable with the increase. I think it's an improvement for what we have been able to offer. And our intent is to actually monitor these things a little bit closer. And if there is a need, we'll find a way to bring it back to the board.
Just as somebody who lived on those
Yeah.
expenses every day, it was tough sometimes.
Yeah.
You know.
It's not, our staff don't travel that
Oh,
much.
okay, that's
Yeah.
fair.
And when we go to conferences, it's usually, you know, some of the meals are included and things like that. So it's not as big of an issue in our sector.
Any other
thank you.
comments or questions? No, then we will vote on that package of reports. All those in favor? And that is passed. Next is the Tenant Services Committee reports for information. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Corboy, to just give us a summary and of those reports from chair viewpoint. John?
Sure. I was not at that meeting. I was not available that night. So I've reviewed the reports, and if anyone has questions, happy to answer them. I envision, like, in the new year, working a little closer with people that are involved in the work, just to be engaged a little bit more in the strategy and making sure that we're monitoring the progress. But there's a lot of great stuff going on and engaging with the tenants, and that's been great to see. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to comment later on attending committees. I didn't go to a single committee meeting in November. Every night that there was a committee meeting, I have compulsory education through my board service, which means I had to be there or else. So it is frustrating at times when we can't make committee meetings. And I think I wasn't here, of course, I was on holiday, but I understand we're going to be looking at that. And I think that's a good idea also. If we can get more flexibility in terms of that. So I think we're all challenged by that, John. And, you know, sometimes we find the thing we really want to go to all of a sudden is on an evening where we just have another commitment that we can't do anything about. So thanks for that. And certainly don't worry about that. So there are 5 reports. We'll look to move and second them. And if anyone has any questions, they can start by John's reviewed them, so he can answer them or refer them to staff as he sees fit. So do you want to move them, John? Yep.
Yes,
so,
absolutely. Through you, Chair, I move to approve these reports.
Thank you. The chair will move them, and so he's standing behind them. I got him on the hook now for that. So I just need a second. Mayor Grantham. So any questions or comments on any of those reports? No, doesn't look like it. All right, so we'll vote. All those in favor? So that is passed, and thanks, John, for doing that. The last two reports and business, the first is staff report 2023-72, which is the updated land acknowledgement. I know Paul was going to speak to it, but I think the land acknowledgement was circulated. And I think we've all looked at it, and I thought there was sort of general approval sorts for it. So why don't I get a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor McAllister, seconded by the deputy mayor. And we only have one deputy mayor here, so that everyone knows who that is. I just a brief comment. I thought it was timely, and I thought it was well done, and so I think it's probably going to get our support. Anybody else have any other comments? Great, so let's just vote on that. All in favor? And that's passed. So at the next meeting, of course, we'll be using the new updated land acknowledgement. The last formal report is the staff report 2023-73, which is a selection of RGI households for vacant units. And Paul, you're gonna deal with that.
Just briefly and through the chair, just confirming and sharing the housing division notice that we received related to the selection of RGI households for vacant units. This comes after changes at city council approving temporary changes to this process. So now we have the information on how this process is going to work. Staff attended a social housing advisory committee where we received a little bit more information, and we'll continue to work with the City of London to make sure we understand what their expectations are and how we're going to track and monitor this allocation. There's, I think we're looking forward to seeing what impact this has in our community, but we want to make sure as we implement the new process, we do it in a manner that the city is looking for. So
Can you just tell us what, like, maybe
So-
in your own, in lay words, what is the new process?
So the new process, so essentially the first, the priority model for allocation of RGI housing in the province of Ontario is the first household that's offered a vacant unit. The first priority is those victims of domestic violence and human trafficking, known as the Special Priority Program. So what we are required to do as a provider is when we have a list, we will always offer it to a special priority household if they're on the list. When we are moving off the special priority household, we now offer the next 10 units that are outside of that, 4 of them to folks on the chronological list, 1 off the urgent list, and then 4 off the chronological and 1 off the urgent. So that's a fundamental shift from special priority and then 9 urgent and 1 chronological. So it's going to shift the characteristics of the households we serve, the needs they may have in the community that for support. So what we need to do is just make sure we're tracking those 10 allocations in a way that we know that we're compliant with the legislation, and confirming whether that's the next 10 units at that building or 10 units that we have vacant that we're tracking. So there's just a few minor administrative things we want to make sure we get right when we roll it out for staff, and we'll have to develop the appropriate internal processes to both make sure staff are doing it and that we're monitoring it correctly.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And how is that going to affect our tenancies, like the nature of our tenants or anything like that?
We should see the higher needs tenants that need more support should be moving and streamlined to the hubs or other more appropriate supportive housing, and just the folks who are on the chronological list, their basic need is affordability, and they may have some minor support needs and things like that. So we should see more households that really have an affordability issue versus social or mental health issues coming into the buildings, which will just would increase the likelihood of success of the tenancy. So if we're dealing with someone who's got stable housing for 5 years or longer, but is having an affordability issue paying their rent and things like that, though we'll get more tenants that fit that profile versus folks that are street homeless and active mental health and addiction issues. And while we have those households and we support them to be successful, our issue was the number of households that had that acute need was higher than we could manage, and it was impacting, go to your question on the seniors, it was impacting who the neighbors were. And that we should see that sort of an improvement in some of those social issues and the improvement in the success of tenancies.
Great, thanks. I wonder if either of my friends from the city, since you were the ones who dealt with this, want to comment on it or expand on what, I understand this may be an important sort of change for us and may fit into some of our strategic goals. So I don't know, maybe, although you're not feeling well, Deputy Mayor, are you up to it?
I'll just say, I mean, I think Paul did provide a fairly decent layman's terms overview. This is going to take some time to have some impact overall on the quality of life that people are experiencing in our units, but I think it will have an impact. And I know that it was referenced as a temporary change, and that will continue to evolve. I feel fairly confident in saying that it is not a change that we're just putting in place for a couple months and then flipping back to the old model. It is more a temporary change while we examine whether more fine tuning is required on some of these things. So don't be scared by the word temporary. We're in this for the long haul to change how the placement process works for everyone. And yeah, I'm just going to shut up there because my throat's too sore to even go for a beer with you after the meeting, Mr. Chair. So that's how crappy I'm feeling.
Yeah.
If I can.
Yeah, I was gonna go to you next, Counselor, so yeah, I'll let you take over from there.
Yeah, and through the chair, just to echo the deputy mayor's comments, I mean, I feel like the work that we've done at the city was kind of directly from the feedback we've been receiving from here, and we really did take that to heart. You know, deputy mayor and I had talked about this before. We knew the placement was an issue. We'd heard the feedback that we'd received from the board, from tenants as well, in terms of dealing with those neighbors. I know it's going to take some time to change over some of those tenancies, and we're trying to support this board in terms of what they were looking for, trying to have more stable tenancies. So I think it's a move in the right direction, and I agree with the deputy mayor. I think this is something that in the long term we definitely want to.
Great, thank you. I thank all of you for providing that. I think that, I mean, we've got a vote yet, but I think this is something we've been looking for. We've advocated for it, and we do appreciate that council is listening and has made these changes. So that's how I feel about it in any event. So any other questions or comments about this particular issue? I just wanted to highlight it since it could be fairly important. John, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate through you, Chair, the creativity. I'm just wondering, like, who was consulted and what led to these changes? Like, what drove the decision to make this change, and how do we feel it's going to be successful? How are we going to monitor that? What was the driving force behind the change? Like, is there another housing corporation doing something similar that's working well for them? How do we plan on knowing it's been effective or not?
Is there someone who wants, there may be more than one person who wants to respond. I'll start with
Yeah.
staff, and then I'll go to, or Deputy Mayor, go ahead. You go ahead.
Sure. So I'll start, and then staff can jump in with any additional things they have. And John, I'm going to apologize right off the top. I don't have the report from council in front of me on this at the moment. But all of our not-for-profit housing providers in the city were consulted in this process. This was not just London Housing, Zarin, Homes Unlimited, like the list goes on. They were all involved in this process. Everybody is struggling with the same problems. They are not an indwell. They cannot provide the wraparound supports that some of these tenants require, and placing tenants with those support needs into these units without supports was causing not only in some cases tremendous amounts of damage to these units, and ended up with end notices for behavior to remove them, but it was also causing considerable fear, concern with other tenants in the buildings. And so it was partly coming from some of our tenant satisfaction surveys that these housing providers have done as well. So I know we do our own here at London Middlesex Community Housing, but these other providers do as well. You know, Homes Unlimited and others, residents, affordable housing. They do tenant satisfaction surveys as well. And so part of this was driven by the tenants, part of it was driven by financial costs, and part of it was frankly driven by the fact that the policy had not been updated since 2005 here in London. Other communities, and there was an environmental scan provided, and I'm not going to recall off the top of my head how many exactly it was, but multiple other communities, and particularly large urban centers, but even Chatham-Kent and smaller municipalities have changed their ratios too. So this is much more in line with what other municipalities are doing, and updates our policy for the realities of today instead of 2005.
Okay, so why don't we go
Awesome.
to staff to do the monitoring part? How are you going to monitor it? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think we can, Paul, maybe you or you could just tell us how we're gonna know we're succeeding, or this is making a difference.
Sure, sorry, through you, the chair. I actually have a meeting set up next week with all of my tenant placement staff so that we can start to have those conversations. Part of what we need to be monitoring is ensuring that we are offering the way we should be, that we're in line with the 4 offers to the chronological. So it's tracking those pieces, but then it's also keeping track of the evictions and you know, applications to landlord tenant board. And I don't know, honestly, that we'll see a huge shift in the next 6 to 9 months, which is sort of this temporary time frame for these changes. It's probably going to be a little bit more long term than that. It's going to take, obviously, it took us from 2005 until now to get to sort of this current state. It's going to take a few years to start, but we're going to start putting those in place as of next week that we're tracking internally. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you all for that. Like, I appreciate the innovation and the different approach and council's support of it as well. And I think it's one of those things where clearly what we've been doing isn't working well. So I'm glad we're taking a different approach. And I think too often we give up on new ideas before we really give them a chance to see how effective they are. I just want to make sure that we're doing something to track that. So I'm really grateful that those conversations are happening. And I like hearing the flexibility that we'll adjust it as we go and pivot as we need to, and the changing times and needs, and we can adjust it as we need to. And I think together we can figure out creative ways to do that. So it's welcome news, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Just to summarize, I mean, the reason I wanted to stretch this out a little bit was to just sort of indicate the importance of this to us, the appreciation that we were heard on this issue along with other housing providers, and it was important to us, and now we have this change. So bit of a Christmas present for I think for us, and more importantly than us is our tenants, that we're going to have better tenancies for them, I hope, moving into the future. So with that all being said, I'll just call the vote on that. All those in favor of receiving this? Thank you. That's great. So I think we have 3 matters for new business. I have one, Paul has one, and John has one. So John, how about we start with you? You said you had a matter you wanted to raise under new business.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. Just quickly, Paul, with the conversations that happened with the ADM over at Housing, just wondering, are there Q&As, are there answers where there talks about increasing shelter limits or anything like that, or just sort of an overview of the discussion and some of those policy pieces, you know, we've mentioned over the year, really, the things that we know are obvious barriers that aren't practical. Are those the things being brought up in conversation, or is there a summary at some point that can be shared with the board? That's my only comment on that.
Thank you. I think, and through the chair, the conversations is sort of a series, and through last spring and summer, it was the local housing corporation sharing our experience in the current environment, just to sort of making sure the ministry was aware of what challenges we were facing. The meeting we just had recently was more of a verbal update on some of the initiatives that are moving forward and how they're thinking of solving those. We expect that we will have a more fulsome update at the Q1 meeting. So I should be able to come back with a more of a fulsome report in like late Q1 or early Q2 to sort of say, here's the different initiatives that are driving it. And while we haven't talked necessarily about increases to shelter allowances or the rates used for RGI for Ontario Works and ODSP clients, we did talk about some of the, RGI simplification, how where we're not talking to RGI or Ontario Works and ODSP staff to confirm the eligibility of tenants for the program, and we moved right to income tax, that's a significant negative impact on the tenants who are oftentimes vulnerable, as well as creates a lot of work for staff. So we're coming at it from that perspective and just sharing that concern. So we're looking to sort of streamline and improve that communication, but we're really not talking about the dollars transferred from the province through Ontario Works and ODSP to housing providers. And that's somewhere that we should be having a conversation at some point, but I'm not sure if that's at the local housing corporation or at the service manager level. But it is something that the increased revenue from that would fund a lot of operations for us and reduce a burden off the service manager.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. I guess I would just suggest that since it's coming up, maybe management and employees and even some of the partners in the community and tenants, if they have an opportunity to provide feedback or input as to things that we think should be discussed or brought up or asked to the ADM, like I think it's good if we prepare ahead of time, get some information around those things. If we find, what three of the key ones are, three of maybe the most important things that are raised, and then bring in some evidence around those things to have those discussions, we're going to be much more successful in what we can leverage and change and convince people that needs changing. So some of those practical pieces we might not see at the top, and then some of those pieces that they may not see at the bottom either. So I just think it'd be good if we can prepare something ahead of time prior to that meeting.
All right. So yeah, I'll have to think about that in terms of what we can do individually versus what we need to do collectively as a sort of shared voice for the local housing corporation. And I am chairing that meeting, so I will sort of figure out what we can bring to the table. I will also share to the board what we provided to the ministry at our meeting in August, because it's the experience we have is similar in London to other jurisdictions, but it's not exact. So they're experiencing other pressures that we may not be seeing the same way. So that will be helpful because that's the framework that is guiding our engagement with this group, with the minister.
I appreciate that. And even like reaching out to Kevin Dickens and connecting in with the city and just getting his perspectives on things as well, because there's a different lens that I think is valuable for the housing corp and tenants to be included, since there's an interconnection between the work being done. So I appreciate that. And I just started to get my voice back. So sorry, everyone. And I'll shut up there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Next thing, I just wanted to bring the board up to date on the Ladybrook issue. As you know, that was those were the units that the city had asked us to get involved in. So we're now operating as a board. I'm chairing the board. Kara is vice chair, I think, and Paul is secretary of that board. And we've had 2 meetings. So there's now a contract between LMCH and that entity for us to provide services, property management services. We are getting some income off of that, which you should know is identical to what was there before. So we haven't given ourselves a raise or anything. So that's part one is we're now into that, trying to work out a budget and that sort of thing. But, we've done the work we need to do to move in there and make sure things are being taken care of. The second part of it is, and I know staff is starting to meet with the city about plans for redevelopment of that site, what it will look like, what our involvement will look like going forward. So things have moved forward a little bit on that project, and I wanted the board to know that. So presently, we are the property managers as LMCH, doing that as a contract. But hopefully in the future, we might have another relationship with regard to that, whether it becomes part of our portfolio or something else. We don't know at this point, but those discussions are ongoing. So I thought I should bring an update to the board because we had talked about it and it was in place. So we've had 2 meetings and it's moving ahead. So I'm fairly confident we will end up having some type of long-term relationship possibly with that entity. And I'll just turn things over to Paul if I missed anything.
Yeah, no, I think through the chair, that's an accurate assessment. We're just finalizing the transition and the budget and those types of things. It's just to make sure we have positive cash flow for operations, that if there's a pressing need in the building that's not funded through the current budget, that we have a way to, engage with the city on accessing those funds. And yeah, as you say, I think the relationship there, the city is really trying to lead us through the redevelopment options and is interested in making sure that site. I think the number one objective for the City of London is that this is a community housing site that maintains its affordability and that we leverage the site to increase the density where they can. So that is their objective. So they want to lead through the development process to make sure that happens, knowing that there's not a whole lot of funding in the project to fund it through operations. So we're looking forward to sort of in the next 6 months or so, moving that initiative forward.
Right. Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, this is the business you're talking about is the business we're in.
Yeah.
And if we could be a positive influence in that and helping people out and redeveloping it as we've done now with one of our sites, I think it's an opportunity. Whether it'll come to fruition, what it will look like, we don't know yet. But I wanted to make sure, from my point of view, that the board was aware of where we are in that regard. So, and the other part is it's not overly onerous for Kara and I to sit on that board. We've been able to fit the meetings in sort of around our meetings on LMCH. So we're happy to do it. And as long as we keep our board involved and aware of what's going on. So that is the second matter of new business. And the third is about, unfortunately, having to elect another director with Shelley's having to leave the board. So I'll turn that over to Paul. We'll have to strike a subcommittee to deal with that. Paul?
Yeah, and thank you. And through the chair, we have notified the city clerk of the resignation of Shelley Chowns, who served on the board for 2.5 years. So the advertisement for the vacant position is now live with the city. We did a focus on ask them candidates with a financial and or a planning background to join the board, just to sort of fill the gap that was there. So what we are asking for the board is we need to appoint a subcommittee to manage the recruitment and selection process. Staff will do the administrative piece, but we need a subcommittee to review the applications we receive, to conduct the interviews and make recommendations. So we do have a set of recommendations requesting that the board create a subcommittee, and we'll throw those on.
Will the people, I'm not a tech person, will the people who are not here live be able to see this? Is it? Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Now
So this is a very consistent set of recommendations that we've had in the past. We form a subcommittee to review applicants that comprises 3 directors, 1 community partner, and 1 LMCH senior staff member. That we direct the subcommittee to create or to use the guidelines that we have in place for LMCH board recruitment, that we delegate the authority to nominate the tenant board director candidate to the chair of the subcommittee so that we can timely share that information with the City of London, and just authorize staff to do what we need to do to support this process. So I'm looking for approval of these recommendations and looking for 3 or more directors to sit on the subcommittee, so we can then initiate a meeting, review the schedule, and set the and elect the chair. And just for the information of The directors, we expect their timeline to receive the applications on or about January 22nd. And January 29th, we expect to review. So we expect to review those applications after January 22nd, review the scoring, the self-scoring on January 29th, and holding 4 days on February 7th, 8th, 12th, and 13th for potential interview with applicants. So that's the timeline that we're looking for. So I just making sure that folks are aware, if you are not available in those dates, then that's, you know, self-select out. But just that's the general timeline we're looking for. And it's typically one Teams call, and then 2 to 3 in-person interview dates that will last like no more than 2 hours each, usually for each date. So that is the commitment time, the end of January, beginning of February.
Now, I know on the last occasion we had 4 directors, and I just want to give that flexibility in there, that if, I don't want to exclude someone, obviously we don't want to have all 8 directors sitting on a subcommittee, but I know I would want to sit on it. I think so that I'm aware of who's joining the board, it would be helpful. But John, did you have a question before I go any further?
I just had a couple recommendations, so if you want me to wait it.
Okay, why don't you go ahead then?
Okay, through you, Chair, I was just thinking that if the people that were involved last time are still interested, we use the same group, and then if anyone else is interested, they can join. Just to kind of streamline it a bit. And also wondering, just with the application itself, I know you mentioned that it's live, but I think it would be great to have a video of somebody instead of just like you know, a cover letter and a resume, to really get a sense of their personality and a little bit more about them before. I just think it's helpful, or just even opening it up as an option if somebody chooses to do that instead of the, you know, the typical cover letter resume. And I think it would open up diversity as well, especially for, you know, newcomers in the community and whatnot, who maybe are not familiar, you know, with some of the standardized Eurocentric ways things are done. So I don't know what the thoughts are on that, but it's just something, even if it's not for this one, maybe for future, but if it's possible to do it now and add it in as an option, why not? That's at least my opinion on it. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, why don't, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair, and I don't know what the deputy mayor's thoughts are on this, but that's heading right into our multi-year budget season, so my schedule's pretty awful in February. So
Okay,
I just want to put that out there.
so you're probably not available, and the deputy mayor is probably not available,
As is the mayor.
and the mayor, so we
We're
have
doing
3.
multi-year budgeting too.
Okay,
I apologize.
I wonder if there's any flexibility. I guess from my point of view, not having any elected members on the committee. The advantage of having elected members is that when it goes to council, there's a counselor there to say, I was involved in this process, and here's, you know, here's where we are. So I wonder, is there any flexibility? When do you do your budget? When do you do your budget?
Maybe we can meet without them, but then when we're done, we can review with somebody who sits in council and just give an overview, and then that way they're aware of what's happening. When it
I would
goes to
also
council.
say, sorry to interrupt, John. I would also say, Phil, that, you know, if you're going to be on this search committee yourself, there'd be nothing wrong with you coming and asking for delegate status when the item's on the agenda.
Yeah, I would do that. Actually, if there was no elected member, and I remember last time, Councilor McAllister was actually chair of the committee, so I was obviously comfortable that he would be able to explain what we did. But if there wasn't an elected official on then that would be my only, and I would be happy to do that. I'm always happy, as long as I'm not behind the plexiglass, I'm happy.
No,
to go-
we'll let you come to the floor. We've already fixed that problem for you.
Thank you very much. But I wanted to do a sort of a retroactive shot on that issue, just.
Well, we half of us still think of you as Councilor Squire anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So
Especially
that's
now that
fine.
we're talking about a budget.
My blood pressure went up. So that's fine. I think the thing is, if you're either on the committee or you're not on the committee, and I don't know how you're half on the committee. So why don't we find out who would like to be on the committee? I would certainly do it. And I would be prepared to go to council and indicate, why we made the choice, what the background was. My only comment about the video is, I mean, I worry that there's some people who couldn't do a video. The other, would they be able to do a video? Does it give an advantage to someone? The other thing is, I understand the applications go to council. So then we'd have council looking at video. I'd like to think a little bit more about that and how it would work before I approve it for this round. That would be my preference, is to have a little more thought about it before I just
Yeah,
go,
that's-
and let's do the video thing.
Yeah, that's through you, Chair. Like that's completely fine. I think it's something to think about as an option, and or both, it's just not going to be mandatory, something to think about in the future.
Okay, that's great then.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will go on the committee. Is there anyone else right now that is interested in sitting on the committee? John will sit on the committee. Kathleen is up there. I don't know. She's looking dubious and maybe. No. That's a definite no. So we've got two of us. We need one more director. Gary, are you interested?
I actually would be, but I know I'm out of town, February 12th to the 14th. I'm in Toronto, so I wouldn't be able to be there for those days. But the other days I think I'd be able to make. So that's
Is
my
there any
only hang up.
flexibility around these dates?
We have just identified 4 days, but there is
I
flexibility
think
on those.
what I would say to you, Gary, is
Yeah.
there's probably gonna be, once we all sit down and look at our schedules, we may need a little flexibility in any
Sure,
event.
yeah, then yeah, I'm happy to help out for sure then.
All right, so what I'm prepared to do is move that we accept the recommendations, or have someone else do it. I'm chairing, I shouldn't do that. Maybe someone can move the recommendations, move the appointment of the 3 members we have talked about, and move that we consider for future, this process in the future, that we consider before doing that, the opportunity to do videos and submit videos as part of the applications. I'm not against it per se, but I just think we should think about it a little more. John, something you wanted to comment on?
Just wanted to move the initial recommendation for you, and then the other one, I feel like it'd be unethical for me to move my own, so I'll stay out of that one.
All right, so you're gonna move the initial recommendation. Will someone second that? Gary will second that. And then all those in favor of that? So we've approved the recommendation. Now we just have to, I don't know if we have to even move. If we have 3 members for the committee, we have 3 volunteers. Do we need to move that as a membership? Why don't we? Councilor McAllister, why don't you move that those 3 members serve on the committee? And seconded by the deputy mayor. So it unless we had the other mayor involved, that's the seniors you can get.
Okay.
It's a deputy mayor and a councillor. Next time we'll go for the mayor to be the seconder or a mover, but let's just vote all those in favor. Great, that's done. Thank you very much, everyone. Gary, maybe we'll touch base in terms of staff, Paul or whoever, just to get some of those dates in mind, and we'll get that
Yeah,
process
sounds
started.
good. Yeah, thank you.
Great. All right, that is the end of the new business. We have an in-camera item for the board.
Do you
So,
mind, Chair, with, if I bring in inquiries and information?
yeah, go ahead. Under new business inquiries, go
Yeah,
ahead.
just, I was waiting diligently, but I'll go around. Just, since this is a housing group, I just would like to tell everyone some good news from Strathroy Caradoc. Not a very well-known fact, we do have our own housing organization called Caradoc Housing. It was started in 1982 in Mount Bridges. Since then, it has run a RGI seniors unit in Mount Bridges. And within the next month and a half, we will be opening our next unit, 37 unit in Mount Bridges, affordable housing. And it's geared for women and children fleeing violence, seniors in need, and veterans in need. And for a small little community, that's a lot of work that we've done. We're funding it ourselves. It's a separate corporation, but the municipality's backstopping it. I will invite everyone when it's open, but it's pretty exciting news for small little municipality. And our next step is, I've done this, challenge both our staff and the county staff to look at something in Strathroy. We have some land that's available. And the vision is something that can take in the entire housing continuum. It's right from, supportive, some type of supportive, RGI, affordable up to market. So stay tuned for that. We're trying to do, but it's with a great deal of pride that we say that we have our own, housing corporation and we do the best we can out there.
Well, I guess I would just say congratulations and good work. Nothing but credit for that, doing it in that way. So that's something that we should all talk about as members of the board as we go out and talk about what Strathroy Caradoc is doing. That's great. So with that completed and all of the new business, we're going to go in camera. So I just need a motion to go in camera. Moved by John, seconded by the deputy mayor. All those in favor? All right, so I think we'll need about 30 minutes. Staff doesn't all have to come back. Just need a motion to adjourn. Oh, the deputy mayor, who doesn't look well, will move it, and John Corboy, who looks tired and needs to feed his daughter, will second it. All in favor? We're adjourned. Have a great holiday, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you
Merry
for your
Christmas,
work.
everyone.
Happy
See you
holidays,
in the new
everyone.
Thank you,
year.
everybody.
I picked up.
It just, I don't know, I have to.